over to our corral of engaged and passionate citizens. I know you guys have been listening intently. First, quickly introductions. Barrett, concerned citizen without a doubt, with passion in his veins for this topic. Also, you work in education. Sarah, parent of a very young child, also the same qualifiers of passion. And Andrew, an engaged young man who will be lucky to have him as a parent someday. Let's just start from what we've heard so far. You know what? What's piqued your interest in what you've heard so far? Don't let me get in the way.
It just seems like this big thing of, what does accreditation mean?
Right.
What is it about? And what does it mean to the city of the schools, or I guess, or districts that are unaccredited? For me, I just sort of feel like, what does it mean? Because I guess the St. Louis Post-Dispatch wrote an article about a month or two ago that said that students in voluntary transfer students that went to suburban schools were getting outperformed by city students in the St. Louis Public School District.
Just for a point of clarification, these are students who, this is a whole other show in and of itself, but
yes.
Students have the right to, when their school district is unaccredited, to move to another district. Again, that's almost a whole other show, because that's been tied up in the courts. But your point you're making, the news recently was that the students who stayed in those districts actually outperformed the students who transferred.
Yeah, so my question is, what does accreditation mean? Because if students from the city are staying in their home schools and going to magnet schools and outperforming students who go to suburban schools that have accreditation, what does it really mean?
Well, I think that was a really interesting point that came up, was talking about it in relation to pride of the students and kind of what we're telling them. To me, one thing I kind of notice is we're telling them that accreditation isn't important. It doesn't matter to what their kind of schooling to go. It doesn't matter to college decisions, but it's still important because we're obviously not accrediting them.
Right.
And maybe that doesn't affect the top performing students, but how does it affect the students who maybe are on the cusp of dropping out, telling them that their education isn't accredited?
Well, I think, Craig, that even just the Google Hangouts was it's kind of picking up on your 2 points. It's like Craig and Kyra are talking about their dreams. They're moving forward. They really don't care. They are determined. And I love hearing young people say that, because I actually feel like so many times you'll talk to young people and they're either caught up in being like an athlete or something. It's great to hear, I want to be an engineer. God, I love that. And to hear that I want to be a doctor. But then flip side, what Dr. Alex, I think, was saying, it's such a branding problem, isn't it? It's complete branding and reputation. If you're an unaccredited school, this was picked up by the New York Times, I mean, it's like, it makes the city look bad, even if it's challenging. I mean, even if things are changing and then they're going in the right direction, it's about the brand of how it reflects the city. And I think that's the challenge, because even as you just pointed out, it's like if you look at the performance, it can be completely contrasted. You could say schools in the county, students aren't actually performing in some elements the way that they are for the city, but you could not tell anyone that based on how they feel from the PR side of things. I don't know.
The one big moniker put on top of everything else to kind of determine
perception,
what their education is, and that it's a district-wide. It's not school to school and different things like that. So I think it's a much more complicated problem than kind of we're being presented.
Well, I question the process, because how do urban districts with large amounts of students from impoverished backgrounds compete with suburban districts with large tax bases and students from middle to upper middle class socioeconomic levels? I don't think that's not apples and apples to me.
Right. Well, I think the interesting thing, I really do like how you guys explained out the point system, because you read it in the 14 points and the 6 and the 9 and less than 6. I think that's great to explain it, but I always feel like there is this kind of like X factor, which is, I don't know if it's culture, I don't know if it's, but it's like we have to acknowledge poverty. We have to acknowledge sort of the type of households that we're coming.
Sometimes.
And I just don't know, this is beyond my scope of knowledge of how that is incorporated, or does it even matter when you are looking at this?
Well, look at the themes they were sort of talking about in terms of districts that are unaccredited. The St. Louis Public School District, Kansas City, Normandy, Riverview, all districts with large populations of minorities who if I looked at the data, I would guess and say they come from impoverished backgrounds.